Hi, Robin Heppel here, together with Brian Young, and on today's show, we're going to be talking about how to use website analytics to boost your website performance.
Welcome to Strategy Talks by Funeral Results Marketing, where funeral professionals discover the latest marketing strategies that get results. Now join Robin Heppel and Brian Young as they share their insights and experiences to help you and your firm during these ever-changing times in the funeral profession.
Well, welcome to another episode of the Strategy Talks by Funeral Results Marketing. Now, before we get into today's topic, I wanted to share with you that if you stick around to the end of the show, we'll show you how you can claim our content worksheet that'll make it very easy for you to create valuable content that helps drive conversions from shoppers and can also help boost your website's ranking on search engines when done right.
Well, great, Brian. And today we're going to turn the tables. Last week we talked about search engine optimization and on-site SEO, and so hopefully with the funeral homes websites showing up higher in the search results, they're going to receive more visitors. And now I'm going to turn things over to you, where you can talk about improving their performance, especially looking at those web analytics. I know you have a lot of experience in this area, and maybe just talk about a little bit about your experience, and then what web analytics are.
Yeah, sure, Rob. Thanks. So over the last 7-8 years in particular, I've helped a lot of funeral homes and cremation businesses answer the questions: what are shoppers doing on my website? Do they like what they're seeing on my website? What don't they like? And also, some of the more savvy business owners are asking questions like, what kind of behavior should we be finding? And what do I want to see shoppers doing that would be advantageous? Where are their opportunities? Where are their threats or weaknesses? What all can I learn? And that's why Google Analytics, website analytics are such a powerful tool. And we'll talk about what Google Analytics are in just a minute. But website analytics are a set of tools that allow you to track, analyze, and report website data. And when you know how to use website analytics correctly, that lets you measure the website traffic, to some extent the effectiveness of your search engine optimization, how strong your website's engagement is of shoppers, ad revenue spend. You can even get a strong idea of activity that's happening on social media. I mentioned Google Analytics. Google Analytics is a web analytics service offered by Google that tracks and reports this type of website data. And Google launched the service back in November of 2005. And today, Google Analytics is the most widely used web analytics service on the internet. So you'll hear me talk about that a lot.
Great, Brian. Hey, now maybe if you could explain how exactly you can boost your website's performance using these web analytics.
Sure. And I guess there's probably a lot of different ways to explain it. It's a huge dynamic tool that does so much to take us hours to talk about. But fundamentally, it shows us two key areas. First, it shows us how the website is currently being used and responded to by shoppers and visitors, as well as how it's not being used or responded to by shoppers or visitors. And we'll get specific about that in a little bit. And second, as we make changes to things like content, pictures, how the content's arranged on pages, well, then we can see whether shoppers and visitors are responding in a more or less advantageous way. Ultimately, owners are asking, is my phone ringing more? But there's other types of advantageous ways shoppers can respond that lead to phone calls. So those are the two things that analytics let us do. And as far as how can we boost a website's performance using analytics, specifically, we can see where the numbers are weak, average, or strong regarding some type of performance metric. And then we can start making changes that drive improvements where those are needed.
Okay, so then, how do you know then if the numbers are weak or average or strong?
That's a good question. And that's probably where experience comes in to a large extent, because having access to a lot of data to compare against is not something most people have. I know you and I have seen this data for years, but I guess it's a lot like being a website doctor. The more patients you examine, the faster you can recognize the signs, and also the faster you can identify the variables. But even if you don't have that kind of experience, or even if you don't have data sets from other funeral homes or cremation websites to compare against, you can still clearly see if the numbers are improving or weakening after you make changes. And the goal is to get people to see more of your website, digest more of your website, be more impressed by your website, and take an action that's good for you, whether it's buying something on the website or calling you on the phone and setting up arrangements.
Okay, great. But this is probably just going to generate a lot more questions, Brian. Maybe let's get into some of the specifics so the listener can better understand what you're describing. Besides hearing the phone ring more, what other kind of behavior changes are we looking for, and what do those look like?
Well, Google Analytics lets us see so many of the decisions that people are making regarding your website's content. We can see exactly what pages they visit on your website, how much time they spend there, which means they either like the content or they don't. We can see whether they go on to view more pages or leave after just viewing one page, like your home page when they first land there, or if they land on a different internal page, whether or not they look around more or just leave your site. We can also see what page they exited the website from, and these are just some of the most basic items. Now, in practical terms, here's some examples of how we could go about making changes or improvements that would boost your website. So, scenario number 1. ABC Funeral Home's website has 3,000 visits to the homepage. The bounce rate from that page is 68%. Question, what does that tell us? Answer, probably that the homepage is failing to engage people. And that's a fancy way of saying that either A, they don't like what they're seeing, or B, they can't find what they think they're looking for. So what's the solution to that problem? Usually with just a little bit of looking at the page, you can realize whether the content is shallow, or maybe you've got 3, 4, 5, 6 paragraphs on your home page, and they're talking about things like, our funeral home started in 1912, and we've served the communities of such and such. And really it's a bunch of history that should be on a page entitled History in the About Us section. So when a consumer sees a lot of content on the home page that doesn't match typical home page experiences, they'll bounce, which means to see one page and leave. In that case, we could shorten the content, make it short, snappy, to the point, and let the shopper know what they want to know when they get to the home page. Am I in the right place? And what do you have to offer that matches my needs? Which in the case of a funeral home is, we have full services, we have maybe direct cremation services, and then it might also be things shoppers haven't heard of that you want them to know, like we specialize in celebrations, goodbyes, and even casual so long farewells, just to talk outside the box. So anyway, that's an example of how you could adjust the content, and then over the next month or two, we look at the traffic. We expect that the traffic won't go down or up that much, but how much will the time on page increase, and will the bounce rate decrease? If those things happen, you made a good change. And that's really all there's to it. Okay, scenario number 2. ABC Funeral Home has one page about cremation frequently asked questions. The page is averaging a read time of 2 minutes and 20 seconds. So we can expect that shoppers in this funeral homes market are hungry for useful information regarding cremation. By adding some more cremation pages, we have a good chance to A, keep them on the website longer. B, convince them that ABC Funeral Home is a cremation expert and specialist. And C, hopefully generate awareness of special things that ABC Funeral Home offers in conjunction with cremation. So now that starts to give us differentiation. And that's advantageous because, as you know, in a lot of cases, more and more shoppers are starting to use a cremation brand or cremation society instead of a funeral home. And of course, we work with both brands, but in the scenario for a funeral home, they're trying to strengthen their competitive position and differentiation from the low-cost businesses, and they want to interest the shopper in things that make them seem more attractive or that increase the value perception of having a full-service cremation. And along with this, also, we can talk about specific pages like the staff page, the history page, the About Us page. You'd be shocked how in some parts of the country, shoppers really want to know these things. For example, in Virginia, shoppers are very interested in all the pages in the About Us section. They're even very willing to read pages entitled things like, Why Choose Us? What Makes Us Different? What You Should Consider, along with the staff, history, and About Us pages. By contrast, we go up to Massachusetts, and especially in the Boston market, those shoppers don't care about that stuff, and it's very hard to get them to look at that type of information. We have to get very creative in our page layout. And some people say, well, that just seems like too much work to me. But if you're a funeral home owner, and we're talking about your bottom line, an extra 5 or 10 or 15 funerals in a year, what's that worth to you? So that's why looking at what information shoppers are viewing and realizing if we need more related information is a valuable thing. And I've had plenty of experiences with firms. This is a real scenario. They only had one cremation-related page. It had a high read time. We added more pages about relevant topics like cremation scattering, things you need to know, what you can do with the remains, etc. There's a number of different topics. The read time went up, the number of pages viewed went up, and the phone rang more. So that's a really common scenario around the country. Here's a third scenario. ABC Funeral Home has 4 pages in their services menu. Maybe there are funeral service options, personalization, included benefits, and questions you should ask. If the personalization page is never getting read while the other 3 are, then that title is failing to engage in your market. And the reason I picked that specific example is I've seen it all over the country. Now, if all 4 of those pages were getting looked at a fair bit, but the read time on all is low and the phone doesn't ring, then the content is probably generic and unengaging. So the solution would be, since my titles are generating page views, but the content is unengaging, I need to rework that content. And that's one of the challenges a lot of funeral homes face, because the large majority, whether they use a template provider or a custom website provider, if it's a death care industry website provider, they offer a library of content pages. And by its very nature, it's generic and general and unengaging. So you pay for what you get, and good quality content engages. That's why firms like Nike and Microsoft and Apple, they pay a fortune every year to outstanding quality content and copywriters for their advertising. And the same principles work on website pages. Better quality content drives more conversions.
Yeah, well, that's great, Brian. And it's it's really interesting, as both you and I have observed, of what gets read and as you mentioned too, where, and just for the listener, content can be it's just not text. It can be in the form of video. It could be in the form of infographics, and also in text. So we want to be able to engage people to their chosen modality So having a good mix of content, video, multimedia, and even images is a great way to look at this moving forward. And with with the benefit of Google Analytics, you're going to see the result sets that are actually happening from those efforts.
Yes, that's right. And in fact, I was talking about a change there regarding differences between two markets, but yes, we've seen a lot of change and shift regarding the types of content that are getting digested and what people want to interact with first. So, bringing up video in particular, that's huge these days.
Well, this is excellent, Brian, and I know we're going to continue on our conversation about analytics and conversions, and conversion doesn't need to be a sale on your website. It could be as little as someone filling out a contact us form, ask the funeral director form, or ask the cremation expert form, or even a pre-need lead. Those little conversions are your steps to getting positive results with your online marketing. And as our name says, funeral results marketing, that's what we want to help you with, is to make sure that these efforts that you're putting forward online are going to be measurable results. So make sure you stick around for our future episodes as we dig into these various parts individually, and where you can then take them and apply them to your online presence. So that said, Brian, what are some of the other things you can do with web analytics to boost your website's performance?
Well, we can also measure things in relation to search engine optimization or advertising. And I know you're going to delve into parts of this question yourself, Rob, in an upcoming podcast or two. But for example, having pages optimized for key topics. So let's say you're a funeral home and you're trying to get more visits from the cremation shoppers in your market. Maybe you're also trying to boost the website's ranking for searches having to do with cremation. And so you have increased the volume of content related to cremation, and analytics, as I kind of discussed above, are going to show whether or not you're getting more visits to these pages, how much time is being spent on these pages, and whether or not people are interacting with other options on the page. So if you have, let's say, call to action boxes, or if you have a video box they could push the button on, or if there's a form they could download, or a brochure, guidelines for scattering in your city, those types of things, we're able to track how well people are interacting with that, and gives us a better understanding of how your particular market is interacting with that. Also, in terms of advertising, this is really common. In fact, I think you do this, Rob, a lot when you're helping people and they're running some kind of advertising campaign as part of their larger marketing effort. Well, let's say they did a piece of direct mail, and the link that's recommended in that piece of direct mail, whether it's they set up a pointer domain, so maybe you're abcfuneralhome.com, and you have a pointer that just like preplanedfunerals.com, it takes them to the funeral home website, or more likely you have abcfuneralhome.com/plan. We're able to see how many people actually land on that page. It's a page you can't get to using the navigation on the website. You can only access that page using abcfuneralhome.com/plan. So now we're able to see, out of the 5,000 pieces of direct mail you sent, how many people actually came to this page from there? How much time did they spend there? How many people clicked on a couple of calls to action you had there specifically? And that gives us a better idea how advertising is working. And you might follow the same principle. Let's say you're in a market where people still do long commutes. Maybe you're in northeastern Pennsylvania, and people are traveling all the way across Jersey to New York to work. Crazy long commutes. Or same thing on the West Coast in Los Angeles area. So radio advertising might still work. Or you're doing billboards. and you've got some kind of website address listed there that goes specifically to a sub-landing page. With analytics, we can see what kind of performance that page is having. So it's a powerful measurement tool, and if you don't have Google Analytics on your website, I strongly advocate for calling your website provider and saying, hey, I want to have this, it's free, and it takes you not very long at all to install, put it on my site. If you're one of those folks who's in the unfortunate boat of having the largest website provider in the death care industry that does not allow Google Analytics, and you'll find out very quickly if that's you. Maybe if more of you lean on that website provider, you can get them to start installing it again, because it's free and it's easy. It'll help you make better use of your tool.
Well, and Brian, I know if they won't do that, where they could go and be easily implemented for them.
That's right.
One thing before we move on to to add to the landing pages, with the as you said /plan, if we strategically pick that extension, it can also invoke some curiosity. So one of the suggestions that I have is, if you're advertising like in church bulletins, and you're advertising at the Catholic Church, if you are referring to for more information, visit heppelfuneral.com. Oh, okay. There's nothing there that's interesting to them, nor are we going to be able to track that, because they're just going to land on the homepage and we won't know where they came from. But by creating a link such as heppelfuneral.com/Catholic, and then we can actually add some code to that redirect so that it lands on your Catholic Funeral Services page. We would know, though, anyone who entered that into their into their browser would come directly to that page. But out of curiosity, if they're Catholic and they all of a sudden see the extension /Catholic, there's going to be curiosity there for them to check that out. So it in itself can help boost the interactions of your ad, as well as track that on the back end.
That's very true.
So Brian, now what have been some of your most surprising discoveries from web analytics?
Oh, I've had several. Some of them humorous, some of them scary. The first one that comes to mind happened 10 years ago during my first year in the industry, and I thought, who would ever read the staff page? And I was trying to find some way to increase my value to the company I was working for, and thankfully I had journalism training back in college, which is prove it before you say it. So I did a little study, and I quickly grabbed Google Analytics from 15 different funeral homes of different sizes and different market types. And I discovered that the staff page almost always ranks between number 2 and number 4 of the most viewed pages. I should give the qualifier. That's after we take out the home page and the obits. Those are always top 2. But then after that, so it'd actually be number 3 through number, 6. But anyway, you get the idea. It's right at the top. That also means if you don't have a staff page, the About Us page can get more traffic. But consumers love to read the staff page. And I think the reason so many owners find that shocking is they forget that the death care industry is a male-dominated industry, whereas death care shoppers are statistically 72% female. And as everybody here should know, female selection criteria and male selection criteria are about as different as men and women. Well, maybe not quite that different, but there's a lot to it. So that was probably one of my most surprising discoveries with website analytics. And leveraging that knowledge can make a funeral home a lot more appealing, because if all you have is a picture of straight-faced, unsmiling funeral directors and their name and a bunch of clubs they belong to that the average people don't, like Elks Club and Rotary Club and those kinds of things, you're not resonating as strongly as if there's a smiling face and a short story about a real person. So that's what I'd say to that.
Well, that's great. Hey, now, what do you think are some of the most interesting things our listeners could to look for when looking at their web analytics?
Well, there's a lot of interesting things for web analytics. I think first you have to make sure you have Google Analytics set up on your website. As I mentioned, it's free to get. But as far as some specific stats they can look at, really important is volume of traffic. And I'd recommend quarter over quarter rather than month over month. And this should be visible upon logging in. Up in the top right corner, you can change your dates from a 1 month period to whatever period you want it to be. So seeing what kind of traffic you're getting, almost across the board, we've seen all funeral homes and cremation businesses get more and more traffic year after year. There's a few tiny exceptions, but generally speaking, we're seeing that. And you also should stop and look at whether or not your traffic is still mostly computer-based, or if you're seeing a lot of smartphone users. Because around the country, depending on what market you're in, and death care being a little slower than the rest of the industries, we're still seeing, on average, I think it's safe to say 35%, but it's not uncommon at all to see well into the 40s. I mentioned Boston earlier. In Boston, it's not uncommon to see over 50% of the website visitors using smartphones. And that's not just to view obits anymore. So that can be an important stat to track, because if your website is not optimized for small screen viewing, smartphone viewing, you're in trouble. And I think, as you mentioned in a different podcast, Rob, Google has even started penalizing for that. Started back in 2015, and then they are tightening the screws again in 2016. Another important basic you can look at is in the audience section. And actually, I guess I just mentioned that, but that's how you get to the mobile overview. So you go to audience, click on mobile and overview, and you're able to see what type of devices are being used. And the last one I'll give here is in the behavior section. And if these terms don't mean anything to you, you'll see them listed down the left side of the screen the first time you log into Google Analytics. In the behavior section, if you click on Site Content and All Pages, that's where you can see the most viewed pages on your website. And you'll probably want to click on Advanced and screen out the obits, and that way you can get down to the website pages that shoppers are looking at. And that's really where the rubber meets the road, because once we can see what website shoppers are doing, or in too many cases, we just don't see website shoppers doing much of anything. They hit the home page, they go to the facilities page, and that's what you're getting judged on. Well, I'd want better odds than that if I was the business owner. So those are three things that I think everybody should look at when they're trying to evaluate how their website is performing and gauge its improvement or holding steady or weakening over time. One important thing to remember is that due to having obituary pages, the funeral home industry's websites have a far higher bounce rate than probably any other businesses or industry's websites. And the reason for that is many of the death care industry's obituary pages are an all-on-one website page experience. So you read the obituary, you read condolences, you leave condolences, you view pictures, you view the video, tributes. It's all there on one page. So what happens is, if that's my experience, then whether or not I Googled the deceased person's name and landed on the obit page, or whether I clicked on a link in Facebook from a relative or friend, which is a very common scenario. In fact, probably soon it will be the dominant scenario. In either case, I land on that obit page, read the content, watch the video, leave a condolence, and then I leave the website. So Google saw that as a one-page visit, and that's going to count as a bounce. So if you go talk to some search engine optimization or marketing expert outside of the death care industry, and he takes a look at your numbers, he's going to wave the red alert flag and say, this is terrible. There's something really wrong here. And he doesn't understand that in the death care industry, there's actually two halves to how the website's working. You have the OBIT visitors and everybody else. In fact, I'll leave you one other nugget here. There's four primary audiences to the death care website, as I've been saying for a decade. You have your obituary visitors, your at-need shoppers, your pre-need shoppers, and then people who want phone numbers or directions. Those are the four primary target audiences. And again, with Google Analytics, when you start thinking in those terms, we're able to see how the website is serving each of those primary audiences and what kind of opportunities you're creating for yourself or missing based on what the numbers show us.
You know what, Brian, you're absolutely right. One of the things that I've noticed over the course of time of helping funeral homes with their websites is, as we and we're going to be talking about this in our next episode about promoting your online obituaries, and when funeral homes grasp the strategy of driving way more traffic to their website, they're going to their number of sessions or visits are going to increase, and if the funeral homes follow the strategy properly, they're going to be sharing the obituary link with family, and the family can email it and share it on Facebook and things like that. The number of visits are going to increase rapidly, but also the bounce rate is going to increase rapidly because people are going to go directly to that obit. They're going to read it. They're going to read all condolences. They could even leave their own condolences on that same page. And they may then, as you say, bounce off that page because they did what they came to do. And so if you looked at that stat in isolation, it's not going to look good. But what I believe what Brian has been trying to teach you today in our episode is for you to become a student of these analytics and understand what they mean. And sometimes you have to drill down a little bit and really see what the numbers are. So just taking the global stats from, say, your dashboard it might be a good snapshot, but it's probably not telling the whole story. We've also had one of the things that we found, and we do this when we're going through the process of helping clients with their cremation arrangement website. And first we might look at the analytics of their funeral home website if they already have an existing funeral home, and we see if their market seems to be more mobile friendly than other markets. And now we have some clients who have 2/3 of their traffic are mobile friendly. When we drill down though into if we're looking at a cremation website, when we drill down into the arrangement process and where do they get to check out, those pages are flipped because maybe they've done some preliminary research on their phone, but when they're going to make decisions and go through the whole process, they may feel more comfortable. And I'm the same. When I go to buy something, I rarely buy it off my phone. I might do some initial research on my phone, but I'm going to sit down either with on my tablet or laptop or desktop to complete that. So again, we don't want to look at these as just the one overall snapshot, but the great thing is it gives us such insight as we drill down to that. One of the things that we're going to be introducing as one of our offerings is our War Room Report. And when you go to battle, you want to know what's going on. You want to get all your intelligence. And with our reports, they're going to bring in all of your pertinent and we're going to decide. We'll segment the good information out from the not so useful information for you, but plus also bring in other signals from competitive, how your competitors are doing online, all your social signals, how are your social networks doing for you, what kind of results they may be getting for you or not, and at least that you can track them. So look forward to the War Room report before we in the next few months on the funeralresultsmarketing.com website. Hey Brian, this has been great, and what I want to challenge you, the listener, today is to just first of all double check to make sure that you are subscribed to Google Analytics. It's really important that you make sure that it's in your account, that it's not in your web developer's account. So if you don't have a Gmail account or a Google account, you'll need one of those to start, and then you can just give them your it's a code or your account number, and it starts with the letter U and the letter A and then a dash, and you give them that number, and then they can set that up so that you can share the information with them. But if you ever change, you can then you will keep that historical information. So that's really important. And we have a couple things to pass on today for you. First of all, as Brian was talking about how important and how people spend time on the reading up on the staff pages, we have a template, our staff bio worksheet, that you can use to fill out, have your staff just fill it out in point form, and what it does is it asks the same questions for everyone, so they don't have to write a bio about themselves. They can just answer a few questions. Then whoever is the most proficient at cobbling information together, they can put that together, and that would be not only a very rich content page for your website, but people want to know who they're doing business with. And when I was working at McCall's in the 1990s, I had people come in and start talking to me about Ontario, and I was thinking, why are they talking to me about Ontario? And these people, and this was before many people had even internet access. And they said, "Oh, we were on the website and we're reading up on your little bio and see that your mom was from Ontario. We're from 2 towns over." And so now it's even more so that people want to just check up on everyone and get a sense of who they're dealing with. So we've got that for you. And one other thing that we have for you is there'll be a link in the show notes. And what it'll do is, as long as you're logged into your Google Analytics account and you click on this link, it's a link to Google. And what it allows you to do is it allows you to add a custom dashboard report feature that we've created. And you then just accept it into your account. Now, don't worry, it doesn't mean that we have any access to it at all. It's in your account. But Google continually changes what they have on your dashboard. What we've done is we've kind of highlighted some of the biggest or the most important items, just so as you're checking your either monthly or quarterly reports, you can just get a snapshot. So look for that as well, for the Funeral Results Marketing Client Analytics Dashboard. And you can just click on that, and then you just approve it, and it will appear in your account. Again, we do not have access to it. You can just use that as a template to get a report for you, like on a snapshot basis. So, Brian, just in closing here, can you maybe just wrap up for the folks, the key points of web analytics and web performance?
Sure, Rob. Web analytics is the tool that lets you measure and analyze your website traffic, the effectiveness of your search engine optimization, how strong your website's engagement is of its shoppers, and also can measure things like ad revenue spend and even social media activity. So it's a tremendously important measuring tool for a business owner to understand what kind of ROI he is getting from his website, or she is getting from her website. Sometimes you have to do a little thinking and connect a couple dots, but website analytics is what lets you figure out how the website is working and where there's opportunity to increase interest among shoppers. I could go on and on about it, but hopefully that gives a quick overview. There's a lot of wonderful things a business can do with Google Analytics, and if you need help with that or you want to talk more about it, of course, we'd always be happy to explain some of those things or field your questions.
Hey, well, that's great, Brian, and thank you, Brian, for sharing that wealth of information today. It's always great to see how other people come at the same information, so I learned a lot as well. And for you, I'd like to thank you for spending time with us today. At Funeral Results Marketing, it is our goal for you to serve more families and provide them with more funeral services, and that's why we make this information available to you for free. Make sure you check back soon for another episode of Strategy Talks by Funeral Results Marketing. This has been Brian Young and Rob Heppel.
This has been another episode of Strategy Talks with Robin Heppel and Brian Young. To ask a question or leave a comment, visit funeralresultsmarketing.com/talks. To make sure that you never miss an episode, you can subscribe to this podcast for free on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher.